Agriculture Minister Thoko Didiza has met with retailers to discuss the impact of avian flu on the poultry industry. She and her trade and industry colleague, Ibrahim Patel, are assessing ways to improve the supply of chicken meat. Now, the latest outbreak of avian flu has been described as the worst since 2017. Minister Didiza joins me now from Pretoria. Thank you so much for your time, Minister. Of course, this is, or it might seem that this is a dire situation. Maybe you can just shed some light into how this is affecting suppliers and the stakeholders involved. I don't know if the Minister can hear me. Minister Didiza, if you can just unmute yourself and we can maybe just get some sound from your side, if you can hear me.
Yes, can you hear me now?
I think we can. Yes, sir, we can. So thank
you very much.
Thank you, yeah.
Good morning to you and your listeners as well as your viewership. Indeed, the challenge that we're having now in respect of avian flu, we actually have had a discussion yesterday with the retailers following a meeting we've had on Friday with the producers to really make an assessment of the challenge that we're having. One of the things that have come out clear is that the challenge is not so much on the broilers, which means the availability of poultry meat on our shops. However, where we might have a challenge is actually on the eggs. And the reason being that the parent stock, or rather the breeding stock of chicken layers, is what has been mostly affected, which has really created a challenge in the volumes of eggs that can be produced.
Now, I know that imports on the cards right now, and you will be importing or looking at importing from Brazil especially. So how is that going to affect, costs involved here?
Well, as you know, that we are actually importing meat from Brazil, from US, or even Europe. So that is actually what has been happening even at the present moment. The only issue that Minister of Trade and Industry dealt with was the intervention on the dumping. That's why he had to put that mechanism to address the issues of dumping into our local market. But with the eggs, we will be looking at importing in the SADC region, but also in Brazil and the US. And in terms of that import, it will address the issue of table eggs, but also fertilized eggs, so that we can quickly come back on stream in terms of our layer chicks that we need.
Now, in terms of vaccinations, are you looking into vaccinations at this point in time?
We are looking at vaccination as we speak. There are already 2 international companies that have made an application for registering vaccines that addresses the 2 strains that we're having, one being the H7 and one being the H5. And we are, through our scientists together with SAPRA, are actually evaluating those samples that we've received in terms of the efficacy as well as the quality and safety.
I know that France, Minister, has also started with vaccinations because they have a similar situation in their country with ducks and not chickens necessarily. But now they are facing, from the United States, they're facing imposed trade restrictions on their poultry. Do you think that this is something that could also then, after vaccinations, could affect us?
Well, I wouldn't say so necessarily. However, every measure that we're looking at taking, we're doing so in consultation with our industry, that is the producers as well as the retailers. But also, you know that South Africa has never vaccinated before in terms of avian flu. We've always used containment measures where we quarantine, dispose some of those chickens that are impacted upon. So what we have been discussing with the industry is, in the assessment of the existing vaccines, we will look at their efficacy in terms of the strain that we're having in South Africa, look at its quality and safety to both those who are handling the birds as well as the consumers. And we will also look at what are the likely impacts in terms of trade, as you are saying that already France is having a situation where other jurisdictions are saying no to vaccinated chickens from your side. And those are the issues that we will have to strongly consider as South African government and industry working together in this regard.
Now, Minister, of course, vaccinations will also come with costs, adding, even more pressure on prices. And as we know, as a country, we're already facing so much when it comes to the cost of living and the cost of food in general. How will this then potentially affect the prices of poultry and, of course, eggs?
I wouldn't say there will be a large impact in respect of vaccination and how that will actually influence the price, because we've agreed with the industry that even vaccination, where it may be available, where we've actually already agreed that this can be introduced in our market, it will be on a case-by-case, which means people will have to apply and will have to assess whether or not there's merit for such vaccination. I therefore don't think that as a result of vaccination, if that is the choice by our producers, it would necessarily have an impact on the prices.
And I think just, there are concerns that, this avian flu outbreak, as we said, is the worst since 2017. In France, there is also an avian flu outbreak, and concerns there are that that virus, could potentially mutate. And that's also one of the reasons why they've started with the vaccination process, because that mutation might potentially be hazardous to humans. From what you've heard so far, maybe, just give us an understanding as to, is that a possibility at the moment?
Well, at the moment, as you say, we have got the H5, which impacted facilities in Western Cape and KwaZulu-Natal. What we're seeing in the inland is the H7 strain, which we have not had it in our jurisdiction. And our scientists are actually isolating the virus and also looking at whether there are possibilities of mutation. So that is why, in terms of management, we're putting more emphasis in control measures so that we actually do not spread the disease. But also our scientists will parallel look at the possibilities of mutations, if any. And that's why the testing of the vaccine is important, to look at our own jurisdiction and the current virus that we're having circulating, so that the interventions will actually address both the issues that we're currently facing and also look at whether the mutation has the likelihood of actually transferring to humans.
And Minister, I think, it is very important to, take into consideration that, all the stakeholders involved here, the restaurants, the businesses, they would want this to be a very short-term problem, because the festive season is upon us. And we know that businesses are looking to make money, but also, just consumers in general wanting to save and not pay more for something that's so, basic like eggs and chicken. What is government then doing now to make sure that, you keep this problem at bay and also make sure that it is only a short-term problem?
Well, let me say, government working with the industry, because remember, the people who are having farms where they produce are farmers. So the first instance in terms of biosecurity, that's the responsibility of the farmers in the first instance. We're therefore working with them to make sure that containment of the disease is done so that you don't have, a runaway spread that can never be contained. That's the first indication. Secondly, through this report mechanization between ourselves and the industry, we're able to know exactly where are we having a problem, which farms, so that in the quarantine process, you know exactly where you must target, as well as ensuring that we assess between the industry and ourselves on the volumes that are getting into the market, whether there is scarcity and how we can deal with those. It is for that reason that we've agreed that we're going to fast-track the applications of permits, so that those who want to import either from SADC region or internationally can do so with speed so that we manage our local supplies that is so needed. Minister of Trade and Industry, Minister Patel, and myself are also looking at other trade instruments that can be put to use in order to assist the industry.
Now, Minister, you again, you talked about the imports when it comes to the different stakeholders involved. Imports, of course, coming again with those extra costs. And then, especially when we look at eggs, it's also a very fragile, thing. So importing eggs can be very costly. Also taking along at the duration of how long it will take to get eggs into the country. Like I said, that in itself is also a huge concern because it is a fragile product. And the longer it travels, the shorter shelf life it has.
Indeed, but when you are faced with such a situation, you actually have to balance. As you indicated, this is one of the commodities that a majority of our citizens rely on for their food security purposes. So you'll have to take that into consideration. That is why on our side, the issue of fast-tracking permits is important so that the suppliers that want to actually import right now, they can do so with minimal challenges in terms of the permit or licensing that is required. Obviously, the imports would also address fertilized eggs so that you can quickly ensure that you breed your layers in order to ensure that in the short term, you can start to produce those eggs locally without importation.
All right. And I think then, just very lastly, I think just some reassurance then from your side, Minister, to the public, about this situation in the country, and is it under control?
The situation is under control, and I would like to assure our citizens that what is available on the shelf is safe. We have ensured that where there is, the impact of avian flu, we already quarantine so that whatever comes from that farm cannot find its way into the market. So our citizens must rest assured that what they are eating, which is in the shelves right now, both eggs and poultry, is actually safe.
All right. Thank you so much for your time, Agriculture Minister Thoko Didiza, just giving us an update on the recent outbreak of avian influenza here in South Africa.